Hmm.
Yeah, I hope we have better luck with church.
I mean, he's up there talking, but
I thought he was leaving his cell phone on so we could
well, it
hear.
is on, but I'm still not getting anything. You can see him talking right there.
So you guys getting anything? No. Oh, and this is worthless. Jen said, we can hear you and don't.
Go ahead, Charlene.
As we sit here in our chairs, and these things are totally out of control. You know, I can't really do anything about that except maybe pray or help financially somehow. But what I can do is be as kind of loving to the people in my circle.
Elmer?
That's precisely where I was going. We really aren't faced with Putin. We're not the ones that decide if a rocket is going to be sent to protect the Ukrainian people. That's not where in our purview, but we can deal with injustice around us. And injustice comes in many facets. There are many levels of injustice. There's the social injustice you see when someone's begging on the street. And you can go and buy them a meal and give it to them. If you haven't done that recently, you should. And I have done that, and it feels good. It makes you feel good. But then there are grades of injustice. When I was a resident in surgery, there was a tyrant attending who was very unjust and called people names. You know, so I'm just saying that this injustice can occur at many levels, and it's not uncommon in employment that people are treated not justly and appropriately.
Good point. This is what Cy was alluding to. This also comes from the Interpreter's Bible. You can have a direct approach, head-on opposition to a specific evil. Let's use Ukraine as an example. Does the United States military have the ability to go over there and take that 40-mile column of trucks and tankers and tanks and just obliterate them? Yeah, we could do that in a heartbeat. That would be the direct approach, but what would be what keeps us from doing that? The threat of mutual deterrence. That's what kept the Cold War in check for decades. The indirect approach, I think, is what Elmer was alluding to, and maybe Charlene. Cultivate an attitude towards human life which undermines evil. In other words, what can I do within my circle, within my sphere? But that isn't always enough. Sometimes people need to take both an indirect and a direct approach. You know, you've alluded to several things: racial injustice, gender injustice in salary, and all kinds of things, socioeconomic injustice.
So, Loran, how do we decide what injustice to address?
There you go.
So there's no question Ukraine is an injustice. But there are other injustices in the world that we have
Chosen not to.
chosen not to hear about.
Undoubtedly.
Afghanistan,
Afghanistan? Oh, yeah. Okay.
still us. People are selling their babies there.
Yep. All kinds of injustices.
Racial injustice.
We actually have a huge amount of human slavery in the United States. Lots of people are just stolen and enslaved.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So
Loretta?
something that I see a lot is hunger. You don't have to set your down, get food at school, which turns over your strength. To me, that's a terrible injustice.
It is. Socioeconomic, perhaps racial too. I went back a slide. I found this when I searched under social injustice. Bible makes social justice a mandate of faith and a fundamental expression of Christian discipleship. Social justice has its biblical roots in the triune God, who time and time again showed his loving compassion for the weak, the vulnerable, the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the disinherited. For Christians, the pursuit of social justice for the poor and oppressed is the decisive mark of being people who submit to the will and way of God. You like that?
Let me talk.
Ain't it great? We'll walk out of here and everything's.
That's how we can affect change. Is talk. If you talk it, let
Practice it.
something happened to me in Iraq. Very big. My faith was sitting there paying 60,000 a day. And I met my classmate. He the salad. So by and said to David, belongs to the church of God.
Church of what?
Church of God.
Okay.
So they follow the Old Testament, the things, tabernacles, everything. And I said, I don't want to change my faith. I will fix the seven day Adventist, watching my sermons and my Sabbath class. So, but he said it's important for me, for you to see by me and my church. I said, okay, I will be a seven day Adventist sitting. But it is very easy.
Mhm.
Because the brothers over there, they think that it's just to get a love thing. Like to say, I'm saying that I give, but I do are my brother in Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
So I was going to the church for 1 year until something very bad happened. My daughter had quinceañera. It's a birthday party. So for me, it's nothing in the Bible to say not to celebrate birthdays. So I invited a bunch of sisters. My daughter went to a Julia academy, so invited a bunch of sisters there, and it was a beautiful occasion for me to say thank you to the Lord to raise my daughter 15 years of myself and not really get on the faith. 25 people were invited to the church. 40 people invited to the church. And then they were not planning to go. I invited them with 1.5 months ahead to reserve a place. Everyone called me, everyone said they are coming. But 2 weeks ago before the event, I hear some of the sisters say, the pastor say not to go to the park because it's on pagan. And I said, what kind of pagan is that? They give me the information that you have. It's a year coming to Mexico. And I said, I'm not from Mexico. So I celebrate this and I pray the Lord first. And then it's an event, social event for my childhood. We celebrate how we raise our daughter, and the Lord was given first, nothing else. They were against the dress, they were against the food, they were against any kind of thing. But they didn't approach me. Never came to me and say, because I am very respectful about them writing email, I'm going to do this event. I know something it will happen again to say, let me know, but I'm going to submit the invitation. Everything on right. Nobody came to me until everyone was supposed to come, and I need to call each brother and sister and say, brother and sister, I know invitation. I am Seventh-day Adventist. You are Church of God. You are not coming. I still love you. It was very tough for me. It was tough for me. I'm praying and praying, and I never got anxiety attacks. And here I went to this meeting with my sister because I'm telling the whole church going against you, and you don't know. So it was very tough. I pray, and I talk to my daughter and I say, celebration is not going to be big enough that we were planning. That food is going to be over and everything is going to be good, half of the stuff. But something, a miracle happened because it's a miracle for me. My daughter said to me, Mama, what are you worried about? We have our friends, Seventh-day Adventists, invited every single part. You are right. You know the kids can go with their parents. That day was a wonderful day. Everyone was Seventh-day Adventists. I think it's what the Lord wanted. The food was, I waited for 80 people, it was for 150 people, baby. The people, they get food, they dance, they enjoy the party, they keep waiting. We pray before, we pray, and when the kids started the celebration, it was wonderful.
Did that feel like a social injustice to you?
No, yes, it feels because nobody talked to me, saying, sister, you are coming here for 1 year, so will you have to see over here? Let's talk about this. I will accept, I will say, okay, well, sister, I said,
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very poignant example. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's just amazing how the daughter spoke up for her mother, a little child,
Mhm, mhm.
raised that.
Before we leave this, can you think of some biblical examples that illustrate the principles of relating to other people in a Christ-like manner? People that weren't part of your circle, that's one that came to mind immediately, the Good Samaritan. Yeah. So who is that?
Christ was ready to put poking his finger in their eyes because he took the Samaritan of all people and turned him up as a role model.
And Mary Magdalene.
There you go. Any other examples come to mind?
That parable where people were given the same amount of money, whether they worked a day or an hour.
That's a good one. It's a good example. I thought of the Samaritan woman at the well. Now that was Christ himself treating someone Christ-like, but it's kind of illustrates it. Let's go on to the second, and we may end up with this one. The dangers of wealth. Or please.
Sorry, one quick interjection. Because we're talking about issues of social justice in this context. It strikes me, particularly from the examples that we just shared, is that those who spoke to the need were doing so in spite of themselves. And I think a lot of the challenges that we look at with social justice is folks looking at how am I being impacted by it? How is it affecting me? I don't want to say something, or I don't support it, or I don't whatever, because I think I'm going to have adverse impact. I think in each of those examples that's just shared, the focus was on the person or individuals or people who are being affected.
Mhm.
And I think that that's sort of a thread that we've been studying so far. It's looking at others as opposed to looking at self.
Nicely put. I like that. Thanks. So, the dangers of wealth or the pursuit of things. This is the text here. These two verses. Verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. I remember learning that as the love of money is the root of evil, period. All kinds of evil. And the danger really is longing to be rich. It's your constant overarching theme in your life, or craving money. And then Timothy goes on in verse 17 to 19, telling people with wealth not to be proud, not to trust their money. Tell them to use, this is Paul's instruction to the young pastor Timothy. If you have wealthy people in your congregation, this is how you should relate to them. They should use their money to do good. By doing this, they will be storing up treasure as a good foundation for the future. Christ himself said, store up your treasure in heaven where rust and moth doesn't corrupt. Same words. Chuck Swindoll had this to say, and perhaps the most misquoted verse in the New Testament. Paul gives the reason for the descent into eternal destruction, the love of money. The love of money eventually causes a person to exchange his or her faith in God, which is limitless and loving, in order to seek satisfaction and safety in wealth, which is limited and loveless. And Barclay in his commentary had said this about the dangers of the love of money. First, desire for money tends to be a thirst which is insatiable. You never get enough. Number two, the desire for wealth is founded on an illusion, the desire for security.
I have a good friend that I worked with a good number of years ago, went to college with. Some time ago, we were talking, and they've done reasonably well financially. He said, I've been blessed. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. He said, yet I've come to the realization I spend so much of my time and energy looking after these things. I've come to the realization that my possessions possess me.
I got a quote here in a minute that says that's the exact same thought. Yeah. Number 3, the desire for money tends to make people selfish. Number 4, although the desire for wealth is based on a desire for security, it ends up in nothing but anxiety. The more a person has to keep, the more they have to lose. And the tendency is for them to be haunted by the risk of losing their money. Can't ever get enough because I might lose it. You know, stock market crash, stuff like that. The love of money may easily lead a person into wrong ways of getting it. It's an insatiable desire. Tendency might be to bend the rules a little bit to get outside of a legal approach. Tom, looks like you're getting ready to say something.
How do you find the balance in that? You know, I like the quote, God doesn't feed the birds, but he doesn't throw the food into their nests. Which says I have some responsibility to look out for my future. And how do I balance that with, you know, God will take care of me. I really don't have to worry about the future.
Good question. Anybody want to respond to Tom?
The latter part is biblical, the former part is not.
Of what Tom said?
What was the former part?
The former part is because he quoted that I have to do my part also, and I have to go out and take care of my future. That is not biblical. This is our interpretation of stuff. I'm not disagreeing. Good. I just say it's not biblical.
Okay.
And
And yet in defense,
in their quote, it says, you know, yeah, the ants.
Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Yes.
now sluggard.
Yeah, consider the ways you thou sluggard.
Mhm, mhm.
But also,
I think Paul also said, if you don't work, you don't eat.
but Jesus said, consider the lilies of the field, they don't toil, yet God takes care of them.
So there is a little bit of a conundrum there, isn't it?
Well, I think, sorry.
No, please,
I
Sai.
think it goes back to the point you were making earlier about, do you want to live the monastic life, or do you want to be totally immersed? In other words, even in earlier chapters of Timothy and in Thessalonians, there was a group of early believers who reasoned that Christ is coming soon, we don't have to work for anything. And Paul had to say, you know, kind of get off your duffs and do something. Occupying till I come means doing something and not just expecting others to take care of you. Perhaps if there's a text in the Bible that gives me trouble, it is the Laodicean text that says you are neither hot or cold, because I just love the middle of the road.
You like being lukewarm?
Isn't that how most of us are? Neither worldly nor
Monastic?
monastic. We are centered, right, centered, left. And that shapes our view of life. But that's a compromise, I think, when you do that.
Okay.
I
Charlene?
think the biggest blessing and challenge when, if you have enough, is to find someone who doesn't. Find some person or persons that don't have enough and help them so their life is not as much of a struggle.
But I think that's where we get into trouble, is to find what is enough. There's no clear delineator that says, for you, this is enough. So that constant rat wheel that you're on is to figure that out. But I think what Charlene's saying is that if you look to others, then you stop looking at yourself, and therefore you know when it's enough.
That's a helpful concept. How do you know when enough is enough?
You know.
Uh-oh. Marvin has something to say.
We never have.
Hang on a sec. Let him finish his thought. Go ahead.
Well, say, you know, many years ago, a date was a Burger King date. You go down to,
Many years ago.
Did you get an impossible burger?
yeah, that was a Burger King day.
Okay.
And for $5, I could buy 2 Whoppers, and we can sit there on the table and have a date. And that was a good date. Today, some people will be insulted if I get them to a date.
Marvin.
I was just gonna say, those statements by Jesus
Yeah.
about consider the lilies, Jesus was talking about worrying and anxiety about things. You know, the commandment, 7th commandment says work 6 days. So, what he said about, we have a part to play in providing for our needs. These are all good thoughts. I mean, the idea of once our needs are met, let's look for somebody who can help. That's totally biblical. Something else I was going to say, which was very profound. I can't remember.
Welcome to the club. Happens to me all the time.
Well, I'm an intruder. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Oh, please, Jack.
I was thinking of, that was last, Proverbs 39, says, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal, and take the name of the God in vain. So we're instructed in scripture. What's enough? How much is enough?
Sorry.
I'm thinking contentment is probably the answer to
What we're
the
going
question,
next.
how much is enough?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's a very subjective thing. But I was looking at some of those scenes on TV the Ukraine having to flee for their lives. And I was thinking, if I were one of those people, I'd have to leave all my pens behind. Ouch. I mean, it just puts things in perspective.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Fleeing with nothing but a backpack.
I have this former colleague who some years ago, went to his 40th high school reunion. And all he could talk about when he came back, they were very high achieving class, Jewish school, this guy, CEOs and lawyers and doctors. The guy that was the most happy, and everyone was amazed, was the guy whose dream job was to be the high school janitor. And that's where he worked. And he was by far the most content, the most satisfied, the most positive, the most just happy. And they were all stunned because money's a way of keeping score. High score, it's not like golf, low score wins. It's like basketball, the high score wins. And so the more money you have, the happier you're going to be. It's like that was completely upended. And they were all shocked. It's like, how is it possible that this janitor are over?
Is this happy?
He's the happiest guy. He was really shaken by it. He's like, I missed something.
He had this in contentment. Let's transition to that in the last 10 minutes. In the beginning, we said to live a life of righteousness and godliness affects how you relate to people, how you relate to things, and how you experience contentment. These 3 verses, true godliness with contentment is itself great worth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. That made me think of, where would I do that illustration? This. So if I have enough to eat and if I have warm clothing, I can be content. You're all familiar with this. This is what? Maslow's hierarchy, Abraham Maslow. All the things that are mentioned there are all in that very first level. I'm not talking about esteem or self-actualization. I can be content if I have the things at the bottom. Maslow's. And just for a little humor, while I was searching for an image, I came across this. This is Maslow's Pyramid 2.0, the digital needs. I need a cell phone, I need Wi-Fi. And up at the top, I need YouTube and LinkedIn. So contentment. This text is, when I think about worry or anxiety, I always think about this text. Philippians 4, we studied it a few weeks back. Philippians 4, 6, 7, and 9. Don't worry about anything. What little ditty song does that remind you of? Don't worry, be happy. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. Keep putting into practice all you learn and receive from me. Then the God of peace will be with you. So as I was thinking about this passage, I dubbed it this. Not Valium. Trusted in God, and yeah. Mm-hmm. The truth is, we will never find happiness in the acquisition of more and more and more. Contentment is not something we find, it's something we decide. Does that resonate with you?
Yes.
I can make a conscious decision. Somebody asked the question, how do you, your name is not coming to me. I know you so well. Fiona, thank you for mouthing it. Fiona expressed it. How do I know when enough is enough? I can make a decision. I can be content. Your janitor illustrate, high school janitor illustration. He made a decision. This is what I must have felt really needed at that school and appreciated, and therefore he was content. And it was a conscious decision. Please.
It's a long story, but it was really touching. There was a little excerpt on the news channel about a man that was a big CEO in New York. He lost his job. He found himself able to start this donkey refuge. He said his mind in New York was like a snow globe. It never stopped. And when he walked on that property, he felt serenity. And he said, I always wanted to make a difference. And he said, I found out I could make a difference by helping these helpless animals. It was nothing about money. It was all about.
Nice. So it was nice illustration. Thanks. Elmer.
But you know, wealth, let's not use the word wealth. Wealth has a connotation that's negative. Satisfactory income doesn't mean you're unhappy necessarily. I look at my father, who came from very impoverished means in Bolivia, where out of 11 siblings, 3 survived. They were happy. They talked with great delight about the field of vegetables and fruit that they could walk out of their home and just eat right out of the. But yet they were sweeping the loose dirt off the floor because they didn't have a solid floor. They didn't need it with the weather. Came to the States, he was happy to be here. We lived under the Hollywood freeway. And you know, while my mom worked at the White Memorial as a nurse, and yeah, we were happy. Then he went into practice. He and I went into practice together. I joined his practice. He was very happy with that situation. And then I had kids for him to take the kids to the beach house. So each step of the way, he found contentment. Wealth, or let's say a satisfactory income, does not mean unhappiness. You can be content in many stages of your life. That comes from inside.
There you go. Nice illustration of that. Nice illustration of that. The second quote down here, contentment is an attitude that says, I will be satisfied with what God has given me. When we make the choice, the conscious choice, we decide to be content, we receive 3 priceless gifts. Current enjoyment instead of constantly striving for something else. I'll be content where I am today. Enjoyment, current enjoyment. complete freedom to recognize and applaud others' achievement without envy. I look around and say, man, everybody around me is driving a BMW or whatever, lives in a giant house. Like, I can't be content. And the cultivation of a genuinely grateful spirit. So in summary this morning, we've talked about living a life of righteousness and godliness, and we've talked about it from three perspectives: how we relate to people, how do we deal with social injustice, how do we influence the world from where we choose to live, worldly or monastic, or hopefully somewhere in the middle. How we relate to things, money, wealth, possessions. And we've talked about living a life of contentment. And this morning I was finishing touches on this, and I thought of a song, and I found this lovely a cappella version, so I'm going to play it for you in closing.
Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. His cornerstone, his solid ground. Through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are still